Hey, this is Brian, your favorite Q50 YouTube owner. I'm just kidding. Okay, anyways, I was thinking about my heat exchanger and how, obviously, to improve things, just thinking about, things like this in the evening time and looking at pictures. And then I noticed that the factory heat exchanger, the hoses that run to it are different than the Burger Motorsports plumbing of the hoses. Okay, so let me just get into this more detail, okay? So if this could be an issue, and then I just may be blowing this out of proportion, but something just doesn't rub me right on this. It just doesn't seem to be the best way of doing it, okay? So here I'm gonna explain. The stock heat exchanger, which is in this picture here, what I am assuming, because it just makes sense from the factory heat exchanger and how they plumbed it up, is the coolant is coming in from that lower hose on the passenger side, the very lowest hose, and it's coming up and it is going up against gravity, but then it's being pumped and then it goes into the heat exchanger on the passenger side and then flows across, and in the process drops down to the outlet, which is on the driver's side, and it's on the very lowest end of the driver's side. So gravity is flowing that across and pulling it down and just easing the flow and just making it easier and less restrictive, I guess, in a sense. That may not be the right word. But then it exits at the outlet in the text that I have right there. Then it goes back up to the car, to the intercoolers, and cools the intake charge, okay? So that seems to be the best system. And how I can kind of confirm that, or just make sense, is that I then go to the picture of the AMS heat exchanger, and it is plumbed, hosed, routed just almost exactly to the factory heat exchanger, of course, because it mounts in the same position. But then in this picture, you see the inlet is over there in a higher position up there, and then obviously gravity, as it flows across, pulls it down to the outlet. Now the outlet is not down at the very, very bottom on the driver's side, but it's definitely lower than on the passenger side. So there's got to be, it just makes sense. It's benefit that, it's flowing coolant or water, or just your coolant capacity easier in this configuration. So let's take a look at the next picture now here. Okay, so here I have my car with my Burger Motorsports mounted per the instructions at Burger Motorsports. So here we get the opposite. It's turned around backwards. So we have the inlet at the bottom and the outlet at the top. So in this picture, the fluid is coming in at the bottom and it's having to be sucked out of the top of the driver's side of the heat exchanger. It just, it may not be a huge deal. I may be making more out of this than it is. It is a closed system, and it's flowing through there. But I just think it makes more sense to have it flowing the other direction from high to low. And then they have the temp sensor mounted after it flows through the heat exchanger, through being the hottest, and it's exiting from the intercoolers, and so the sensor is measuring the hotter temperature of the inlet and the outlet, because once the coolant goes through that sensor and goes into the heat exchanger, then it flows across and it cools. And I would like to best say, probably in my best opinion, that it's cooling between 5 to 10 degrees or maybe more, and then it goes back out the outlet. So it just makes sense that you would want to have the temp sensor, maybe toward, the end of the inlet. And it doesn't look like this on this drawing, but let me show you what the next picture looks like. And this just kind of shows you again, this is from the Burger Motorsports website, of the inlet and how it flows across, and then the coolant has to go up and then out the outlet, and then it flows across the temp sensor. So I didn't hook mine up incorrectly. Obviously I did it correctly. So mine looks just like theirs. Okay, so but here's what I'm thinking. Now here's a drawing that I made in Photoshop. Okay, and so it reverses the flow back to the factory heat exchanger, and then looks just like the AMS heat exchanger and the Mishimoto heat exchanger. And so what makes this more difficult is you have to reposition the temp sensor from where it is located from more of the factory position up top there. You have to, I don't know how easily this can be done, but if you're running a Burger Motorsports heat exchanger, it seems like you would mount that down towards the passenger side somewhere, somehow, if it can be done. And so that would be measuring the coolant coming out of the heat exchanger, and it would be the cooler of the two temperatures. And then obviously something that I just kind of think would be beneficial, instead of just all black rubber tubing with various bends in it, then you could incorporate some aluminum tubing, and then the length of that aluminum tubing would actually, with the air coming in the front of the car, would actually help to reduce some of that heat, give some of that heat off while it's flowing through that thin wall aluminum tubing, and then it flows into the heat exchanger. And then so it's coming in the inlet up at the top on the driver's side. It's flowing across and down with gravity, and then it's going out the passenger side on the outlet there. So it just seems like that is such a better, maybe a more efficient way of flowing that coolant through the heat exchanger. I don't know if anyone's ever thought about this or recognized this, that the Burger Motorsports has it backwards, how it's plumbed. Okay, so anyways, I just want to get people's brains thinking. If someone has some opinions or, has some information that, just shows that this is just to be a big waste of time, I don't know. I'm just putting this out here and thinking about, something that could be done. So again, let me make sure I've got everything covered. Let me see. Yeah, that would be the end of my presentation here. Like I said, like and subscribe, leave some comments. Let's have a discussion before I even thought about diving in and taking the front bumper off again and coming up with all these parts and pieces from the auto parts store. Obviously, too, this would have to be data logged, data logged with the Burger Motorsports, with the plumbing they have in there and how they show it on their install video, and then run the car in a couple of scenarios and then replumb this, and then data log again and show if there's any variable differences, big or small. But I mean, it could be worthwhile. So it's something that I'm just thinking about, or just getting rid of it and going with the Mishimoto. I like Mishimoto products, and that way I could just install it. But again, that means $550 more and then more hassle. So, okay, anyways, have a good day, good night, and catch me on my next video.